Hello, my name is Grayson Mitchell. Welcome to my presentation for Principles and Methods of Delivery for my final assignment, integrating the appreciation of Indigenous trades into my technological design unit. I'd like to start off with the land acknowledgement for Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am in Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, specifically the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations, as well as the Métis people. So moving right in to my plan for principles and methods of delivery for this this unit of lessons. It was a little bit daunting of an assignment, but I feel like I navigated it pretty well and I enjoyed doing it. I think it was a great learning experience for me. So I'm going to get right into my analysis of my lessons and how I delivered them and how I incorporated differentiated instruction and multiple intelligences and multiliteracies and multimodalities into my teaching. So my first lesson was called Intro to the Design Process. It started out with some more traditional practices, teaching practices. Though we have so many new methods for delivery, I still like using handouts in classes. I feel like it's a great way to deliver information to your students that they can retain and reference. For me, I'm very visual when I learn, but I'm tactile as well. So I like to have that piece of information that I can hold in my hand. I love printouts and I love writing on them, and I like posting them on the wall in my office so that they're there and they're visual and I can see them and access them whenever I want to. I do think that there's value there, because when you're just listening to a lesson, I think it's great to have a tool, a physical copy of the information being delivered, just so you can reference it visually while you're listening to the delivery of the lesson. The introductory lesson in this particular class that I designed gives the students opportunity to ask questions. I feel that if you can gain their attention and engage their curiosity right at the beginning of the class, it's basically like a warm-up for an athlete, but it's like a brain warm-up, if you will appreciate that metaphor. It was the first lesson in the unit of study that I created, so I want to incorporate a lot of discussion to warm up the class. I tried to keep the content to a minimum while I could still cover what I wanted to as far as curriculum expectations went, to allow plenty of time for discussion during the class. There was actually two handouts that I was using as methods for the delivery of information. One was the design process, and the second one was Indigenous design one that I did. I introduced them separately so as not to overwhelm the students. My intention was to blend the information together during the discussion, but I didn't want to just give them all this overwhelming information and then have them just create a barrier there for them to progress through the class. The design handout that I did was very deliberate and literal information about just like specifics of the design process, and comparatively to the Indigenous handout, which was Indigenous design and why it's different. It was a lot more ethereal. I feel like it was an abstract concept that I was trying to present to the students there. I like the idea of trying to get the students to think from a more instinctive point of view and not just react input output from material and lesson delivery. I included a video in the lesson also, which I love as an instructional tool, because I feel the video incorporates like three modalities. You have the visual, and then audio, and then textual too, through the presentation of information in actual text during videos, which is great. I love watching movies with closed captions on all the time because I like to be able to read and listen at the same time. It's a great way for me to get a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on. Video, it's such a prominent form of literacy for modern students, because like they engage in it every day on their personal devices and their computers, their televisions at home, whatever it be, social media, movies, TV shows, video games. So the video presentation is a great way to maintain the attention of remote students as well, because it gives them a little more stimulation through their computers, because it's a little less being online. You're a little less inclusive in those face-to-face discussions that are going on in the classroom. It's like you got to really intervene if you want to make a comment or involve yourself in the conversation. So in the lesson after the video, I went back to discussion because I love discussion, and I think it's just a fantastic way to engage students and get them thinking. And I proposed questions as topics to try to incorporate the Socratic method of teaching. My questions were, let's see here, let me check and see what my questions were. What is design and how does it affect our everyday lives? So I thought that was a good way to get them thinking about design as an aspect of every single part of our life, because our lives are designed from every piece of technology to every piece of artifact, every piece of clothing, to every book, magazine, piece of literature, everything. It's all there. The other question was, indigenous design, why is it different? So that was explained through some information that I provided through the handout during the class. The assignment was analyzing an artifact, which is intended to bring some kinesthetic, tactile modality to the lesson, right? To have something physically there that they could analyze, allow them to inspect, touch, feel something real in order to bring that concept of design back into the physical understanding of learning. The questionnaire was what the assignment was, basically, and it was intended for them to use their senses and perception for the purpose of bringing the way they perceive things back into a literal representation. So the way they went through that tactile learning and then bringing it back to the page. And it was also to provide some guidance for what kind of observations they could be thinking about as they were analyzing that artifact. I also incorporated a question that was intended to encourage them to try to imagine what kind of perceptive differences can exist culturally, like how someone from another culture might perceive an item differently than someone of European descent, or whatever the particular differences racially are between students. So I thought that was a great lesson. Lesson 2, I'm going to move on here because I'm running short on time. It's one of my favorite lessons that I designed. I hope that it provided a relaxing opportunity for the students to do something fun and creative and show that cross-curriculum activities can be a great opportunity to learn. The lesson was called Design and Lifestyle. I was trying to bring some awareness as to how to step out of focusing on individual objects in the context of design and look at the bigger picture and see how all the elements come together to produce a larger work, which is the life that we live and how we choose to live it. The primary outcome of the lesson was to understand the relationship between art and design but I wanted to give them an opportunity to appreciate art and design as well, not just to differentiate differences between them. It made sense to me, since I was trying to develop this artistic intelligence through the lesson, that I should accompany it with some music as well. Music being a form of art itself, so it directly relates, but it's also a different form of intelligence than the artistic visual intelligence. So using it to inspire visual creations of art was a natural choice for me to make. I felt it was instinctive. Since I was integrating Indigenous appreciation into the lesson, I decided that to use this traditional Ojibwe music, I thought it would be appropriate and hopefully inspiring during their artistic creation. I chose a song called Bear Song for the music. It's a drum, it's Indigenous singing and drumming in combination. Very nice, very, very peaceful song. I chose the Bear Song because ceremonially I'm a member of the Bear clan through my family, and I like the metaphorical representation there. In Indigenous culture, bears are protectors and teachers of courage, which is so essential to succeeding as a student, is getting that courage, right? Bears represent strength and leadership, which are just, they're qualities that a teacher absolutely has to have to be successful in the classroom. So beyond teaching just curriculum in this class, I wanted to introduce the students to some traditional Indigenous art as well, since that was a topic that it was an art-based class essentially, like it was design-oriented, but I wanted to integrate art there too, to sort of give them a broader understanding of the relationship there. I thought it was a good choice to choose Norval Morrisseau, since he's such an influential Canadian artist, and I was hoping to inspire them to maybe in their own spare time, ideally, look further into his works and try to appreciate some of the beauty that he has represented there through his paintings. The work I chose was called Observations of the Astral World, and it displayed similar elements to what I was looking for in the collage that I was having them design. There was representations of a family unit, and there was animals and plants and things that were related to lifestyle, and it's all brought together in that piece in a very nice composure. So a little more artistic and a little more organized and better line work than a collage, but it's there. The core elements are there that I was trying to get these children the youth in the class to get through and to learn. The modality that I used for the assignment was to blend visual, linguistic, and interpersonal intelligence. I felt that it would be an excellent learning opportunity for the students to have their partner's wants and needs communicated, and to have the student interpret them and present them visually. It was challenging in a way, but not too challenging because my expectations weren't really high. It was more about the effort and the learning experience than what the finished product was. It was process over product 100%. Beyond just the teamwork, I hoped it might teach the students how to emotionally empathize with their peers and develop a common language between them to strengthen their relationship as students, because I think as students they could really succeed a lot more if they worked together and collaborated and worked as a unified unit to try and accomplish a common goal, because they're all there for a common goal, right? The experience of this class may not have been quite as enriching for the online students, but I felt with the proliferation of communication through technology in our society today, it would add a whole new learning experience to the lesson and help develop proficiency with collaborating through these online platforms and through technology and learning this way, since it's becoming more common in our society, and even outside of education in the workplace, it's everywhere, you know. between communicating in personal lives or communicating with doctors or work, whatever it be, it business meetings, online collaborations. It's a tool definitely that needs to be, we all need to be very efficient at. So I'm going to keep moving. I could talk all day about that lesson because I love it, but I'm going to go to the third here because I'm running low on time. The third lesson had value in it, in the traditional mode of doing schoolwork, which I like to be progressive, but I mean sometimes you just have to get down to brass tacks and accomplish some learning that needs to be done, right? The literacy there was intended to be logical and intrapersonal. It was for teaching practical skills related to technological design. The concepts do relate outside of the classroom, though, like of the concepts of the assignment in the lesson. It was about estimating, so it's like to relate that to life, it's identifying needs and then researching, sourcing out where you can find these resources and source out these needs and calculate costs and then turn ideas into reality. So these skills apply to everyone's lives, and it's important for students to develop them when they're young, because if they don't, they'll find themselves out of high school, out of the valley of kindness, as my associate teacher used to say, and be lacking in some of the necessary skills for them to survive. Estimating can be pretty boring. I know from a personal experience, I've been a contractor for 13 years, and estimating was one of my least favorite parts of the job. I'm a very hands-on guy, so crunching numbers was never one of my favorites. Integrating some of the Indigenous appreciation really enhanced the lesson, I thought, because of some of the boring elements of it. So it was like bringing a little bit of refreshment in there and something that's really interesting, and to step away from the numeracy that was going on. If I get the opportunity to teach this lesson in my career, I'd really like to dive further into the concepts of the Indigenous way of living and building, and how well they coexisted with nature in comparison to the European way of exploiting and destroying nature in the interest of economics and furthering the growth of their society through destruction. I really think there's some great opportunities there to encourage students to reflect on the impact of our society today that it has on the environment and the natural world and the natural ecosystems. The assignment was a little boring, perhaps. It was an estimating assignment, but there were some key skills there that I wanted the students to learn. And I kept it pretty basic so that they wouldn't get overwhelmed by the project. Estimating can get pretty extensive, so it was sort of just a basic idea, get the understanding, figure out how to cost something, right? The concepts were pretty straightforward and logical. It's like quantify materials, research costs, project your job cost. Moving forward in any career, in whether it be construction, manufacturing, tech design, there's a million places it applies, right? A million careers it applies to. Estimating and costing, those are key skills that need to be learned by students, or at least introduced to students so they know how to take it to the next level when they get to that level. I hoped that through the information provided about traditional Indigenous structures and modern commercial construction materials, the students could see that the similarities between construction in the two time periods, like just the simple things like basic wall and roof framing systems, like there's significant differences, but there's also some very fundamental similarities there. The sheathing that goes on, the buildings, ventilation, all of these base principles, they're shared between across this time expanse, right? If I was going to teach this class, like actually teach it in a tech design program, I definitely use some scaffolding for differentiated learning there. Like I would want to be doing some demos on estimating before I had them attempting it on their own, because it can get overwhelming, and there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can convey from personal experience that would probably make it a lot more streamlined for them. I included a question on the traditional construction handout to incorporate a little bit of abstract numeracy to try to get a little bit of cross curriculum going on there too, between some math, but not just technical math, like some more advanced math. But I definitely had the intention of working that out with them on like the whiteboard so that they knew what was going on, and probably just allowing them to attempt it if they want to, but otherwise just explain it as a matter of interest for those who were proficient at math or took an interest in math, right? Okay, moving on. I'm at my time limit here, but I got one more lesson I got to get through, so I'm going to do it. My fourth lesson. This lesson provided some excellent design fundamentals for the students. I liked this lesson a lot. It was really good. I was proud of it when I was completed it. It also provided a look into some amazing indigenous design principles from a culture that's renowned for its design in artwork and architecture. I like PowerPoint presentations, so I thought that was a good way to do delivery of the information without it being that much information in handouts. Is just, I don't feel like it's an attention grabber for students. PowerPoints are an excellent tool for guiding the lessons in a visual way when you're delivering linguistically, so that the students have something that they can look at that relates to, like images that relate to what it is that you're trying to convey to them. They're great because also after the lecture is complete, all the information is still there. That PowerPoint is still available, and students can review it and go back over it as they wish. And it encourages the students to keep their heads up. This is another thing in the class. This is what I like about having I know Tim doesn't like the overhead projector, but I think that there's times when it is a good delivery system for information. Makes students sit up and keep their heads up instead of down on their devices, right? It's a pretty easy way to figure out if they're paying attention or not. Okay, where was I? Oh, I could spend hours talking about this particular class, but I had to work within the time frame and focus on some of the fundamentals that I knew the students would need moving forwards in education in technological design, whether it be in technological design, civil engineering, whatever, education or career. There's just some fundamental stuff that they really needed to know and be aware of. Having that terminology and that awareness of it it helps you understand when people are communicating technically to you. What I really liked about the lesson was that it showed students how vast their choices were when it came to presenting ideas. Like there's not only one way to do things. There's the possibilities are infinite, right? And I like that idea. I like to convey that to students that there's so many opportunities and so many paths that you can take. It's a great metaphor for life. One of the things I struggled with in my practicum was encouraging my students to give me physical representations of their plans and designs. It was difficult to assist them as a teacher when they had an idea but they didn't possess the skills to express those designs and ideas, right? The video that I presented, Coast Salish 2.0 Design Implements or something like that, I think it was called. It was amazing. I thought it was great, and it really there was an idea there, a motif behind the video that I had hoped the students would acknowledge and appreciate too. The takeaway that I was gunning for there was trying to encourage the idea that design can be instinctive and doesn't necessarily have to follow contemporary steps. A lot of design is inspirational, and it comes without working things out with a pen and a paper. And that's important that you can develop ideas that way instinctively. They can totally be created and worked out interpersonally, as long as at some point if the process, if you're working with people or presenting things to people, you can represent it graphically. So what I'm saying essentially is that you can develop it within your consciousness as long as you can represent it outside. I also introduced a little bit of a new pedagogical tool that was a bit of an experiment for me in that lesson, which I would like to try. I wanted to give the students the opportunity to ask questions whenever they wanted, whenever they just occurred to them, like even while I was presenting or while I was talking, like as long as it was in a respectful manner, of course. Instead of the traditional way of like, okay, I'm going to deliver this presentation and save your questions for the end and we'll have a question period, right? I felt that this would help them to develop some essential conversation skills, you know, like while I'm delivering the lesson, they might look for natural breaks or pauses before they ask questions, you know, or they might learn not to talk over other students or not to talk over me while I was talking, like develop some kind of a cue to get some attention communication between the teacher student and not have to raise a hand and be given permission, but be able to present their ideas or their questions whenever they really occurred to them. I wanted to give them a chance to learn some of these skills, you know, through trial and error during a lesson like this. So moving on to the assignment, the make a video assignment. I felt was something that could be a fun experience for them. So I like the idea of learning being fun. Lots of the youth these days are making videos all the time. So I gave them the option to choose any delivery method they wanted, like something they were familiar with, right? Social media, something through their phone, something that they were familiar with, or they could just do some basic video on through their computer if they wanted to. I just wanted them to have the choice there, right? Because choice, I believe, is just a great way to implement differentiated instruction. If you give options for students, they will choose the options instinctively, ideally, based on where their strengths lie and where their intelligence lies. They'll be naturally attracted to how they want to present something. When I first had to make a video in the program last summer, I was very overwhelmed. It was something I had never done before. It was completely new to me, and there was just a fear there that I wouldn't be successful at all. But now, with practice and experience, I love making videos. I'm far more comfortable having had lots of practice, and I really enjoy being able to talk without the pressure of the audience watching you right there in person. Though it's something I'm going to have to get past. Like, I mean, I am fairly decent as an orator, and I did well in my practicum when I was addressing the class, but in the class, half the time, half the students aren't even listening, or you're addressing smaller groups, which makes things easier, really, you know. The example reflections that I provided during that lesson, they may have been a little deep for the students to comprehend, like a little bit over their heads, but what I was looking for there was from them was the effort and progress. I wasn't expecting these perfect renditions of responses from the students that were just going to blow me away. I just wanted to observe progress and just assess for myself the progress they were making in understanding the material, like as a formative assessment, not summative. Very few of my students during practicum were performing in their optimal zone. I mean, I think that's something that is, it's not like it was just my class. I think it's something that we're seeing more and more in schools. But I was okay with that during my practicum. I mean, ideally, you would want a lot of your students performing in the optimal zone. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was a teacher was helping the students who were behind and showing them how to have hope and how to believe in themselves. Because I think that if you can get through to your students and encourage them to believe in themselves, then I think that if a student believes in themselves, they can accomplish anything in their lives that they want. All they have to do is believe in themselves and put their mind to it and work hard. Thank you very much, Tim.